Hi, this is the Social Gelo with Angelo show. My name's Angelo. I'm a social scientist, surfer, martial artist, and a whole lot of other things. Coming to you live from Kasai City, Japan, the Social Gelo with Angelo show.
What's up? And welcome to Social Gelo with Angelo podcast. Holy shit, what's going on? No backdrop, some weights behind me. Makes it look like I was working out. I wasn't. But
Nope.
It's Christmas Day. I want to thank everyone for supporting the show. I hope to check out the Christmas special with Sifu Al, or also known as Al DeCoscos. He was on the show today. That got released today. I don't know when this is going to come out, probably sometime next month. But I am right now visiting in California, which is why I'm going to adjust the camera a little bit down right there. Which is why I'm sitting in a chair with my guest, because he doesn't do internet.
Not really.
I tried to message him. He's my mentor. This is Mike Shaw. And I figured, hey, I'm already out here. It's really hard to get a hold of him, and he's right here right now. So I literally pulled him away from his family on Christmas Day and asked him to come out here and do the show. So it's the same deal for everyone watching. The only difference is that I'm not on a split screen, and my guest is right here. So hopefully that doesn't bother you too much. So, Mike, I'm going to try not to go down memory lane because I did that with Larry. I'm just going to go like I do with anyone else. What do you do? I'm probably in the title already said that you're a Kajukenbo practitioner. And then for those of you that are watching that don't know what Kajukenbo is, at the end of the show, it'll say, what is Kajukenbo? Check it out. I did a whole podcast on this. A little history on Mike, because I actually know Mike. And normally I don't like to do this, but I'm gonna do this because Mike is my mentor. Whenever I talk about me starting up doing Kajukenbo, and I had to fight someone who's let's stand up here real quick, Mike. Let's see. You want to see the size difference? If I stand up next to Mike, yeah. When I say I had to spar someone that was much bigger than me and much taller than me, much stronger than me, I'm talking about Mike. And that's one of the people that actually started my Kajukenbo journey. I did martial arts before. Mike was the first Kajukenbo practitioner that I actually fought, and I was impressed. So that's like a fast forward. But for you, Mike, how did you end up getting into martial arts?
Well, as a kid, I always was into martial arts. In my era, that's what you did. You watch kung fu flicks, you go outside, and you practice on each other and beat each other up, or whatever the case is. So as a kid, I always, was into that. Always into martial arts. I always was into the all aspects of it, not just the fighting, but I wanted to see the forms. I wanted to see everything. But just never had a chance to really get into it when I was a kid. Moms couldn't afford it, or she wasn't going to sign me up. So years go by, and I ended up working at Home Depot. I met a guy named Ronnie Sagiri, who's now, my Sifu and Professor Ronnie Sagiri. Had no clue he was a martial artist. We were just, I was actually charged with training him. So I trained him on the job for that. And we would just be talking, having conversation, talking about life and, family things, whatever you're going through. And we ended up getting into martial arts, start talking about that. And I told him the exact same thing. That as a kid, I always wanted to do it, just never had the chance, never had the opportunity to jump into it. So his exact words, well, maybe you'll get your wish someday, So had no clue, and then I get a call from him, a couple of days later. He's like, hey, come to the studio, and so I go in there, and then this is back in 2001, and I've been hooked ever since. Just trained one night and was like, oh, I'm about this. I like this life, so got into it and 20-some years later, here I am. That's pretty much in a nutshell.
Well, Mike is not a man of many words, so I'm going to start trying to pry out as much information as I can.
Good luck, buddy.
So, that's it. And thanks for checking out Social Gelo with Angelo.
Goes over. Thanks. Good job.
So let's back up a little bit. You met Ronnie. Did you do any martial arts or any type of anything before that?
No, just out. Literally what I would do as a kid is, again, we would watch these movies and think we were out there trying to being able to do that stuff. So we would literally go out and just train. Like we had no direction, no instructor, no seafood, no whatever. We were just a bunch of kids. We're like, all right, well, let's try this and let's do push-ups like this, and I'm lifting logs in my backyard and doing stuff like that. I had no formal any type of training or anything like that. I love boxing, so I would watch boxing matches, and I would literally go out with my boxing gloves on my shoulders and knock on kids' doors like, hey, what's up? You wanna go? And they, if they're down, they come out, we scrap a little bit, and then, move on to the next house. And that's kind of what, what I did. There was no formality to it. Yeah, so that's pretty much what it is.
So you did do some. You had some boxing. Like you watched some boxing. Yeah. I know when I met you, one of the first things I asked you, because you had this style that was I never really seen before in martial artists, is usually you'd have the point karate guys, and they do a lot of the hopping and the hands down thing. Then you had more of the Kempo guys that would come in with a lot of back fists. But you did this thing where you would have your hands up like a boxer, and then every once in a while you put your hands down and do like this head bobbing thing. And I asked you what that was all about because I couldn't touch you. I tried to hit you, and you were very elusive. Your footwork was real quick. And your response was, look up Roy Jones Jr. and study him and do a fight study of Roy Jones Jr., and you'll have a better idea of how I incorporate that into what I do.
Yeah, so I would study, like, again, I didn't have a formal boxing teacher or anything like that, but if you watch sports, or if you've ever coached sports or anything like that, that the number one thing these professionals are doing is watching film. Watch film, study. That's how you get a leg up on your competition. So as a kid, I'd watch Sugar Ray Leonard, I watched Tommy Hearns, I watched Roberto Duran, all these great boxers, Roy Jones, Mike Tyson, these guys, and I would pick up little things, here and there, and I would just drill it myself and just work on it just by myself, in the kitchen or in the living room or in the garage, wherever I could. And I would literally, as a kid, it's funny, I would set a timer. I would go in the kitchen, my kitchen's a square, and I have the microwave there, and I would set a timer for 3 minutes, and I'd fight 12 rounds at 3 minutes of just shadow boxing myself as a kid, just
in the kitchen,
just because the timer was in there. So I could set the timer, do my 3 minute rounds or whatever. I'm fainting, I'm doing all this stuff. I would just work that stuff. So when I finally did get someone that can actually teach me and show me how things, are supposed to be done, then I was like, oh, okay. So it started to make a little sense, and I started to develop my own little style of how I would do things. But yeah, I tell my students when I'm teaching, hey, check this guy out. Just go watch this. It will be nothing related to Kajukenbo, or martial arts in general. Will be a boxer, and hey, watch this guy. Watch Miguel Cotto. Watch how he throws his hook. That's what I would do as a kid, to say that stuff. So, watching guys like Sugar Ray, he dropped his hands. Muhammad Ali obviously dropped his hands. And I knew, I'm gauging distance the whole time, so I know I'm out of his range. I'll drop my hands, but I'm in my range. So I would always just play that little line right there as the best I could until I can get in there and get you.
And get me, he did. And get me, he did. So, and then going back to your story, so like obviously, so boxing was an influence, and I think again, the idea of studying tape. This is something I was just talking to UFC coach John Hackleman with last week. He called it UFC sensei. He said back in the day, the Kajukenbo guys, he went to I forgot the name of the bar, but there was like a bar in Hawaii where the old Emperado and all those guys would they go to these bars and they pick fights people pretty much, to be able to figure out what works in a practical scenario. He said nowadays we don't got to go pick fights in the street anymore.
Yeah,
you can study tape, you can see full contact fights, and you can learn quite a bit from watching not just the people who win, but when they lose, how they lost. And there's a lot of stuff you can learn. Yep. He called it UFC sensei, but you can take that to any type of other fight study.
Any realm. Yeah, any realm you can take that. It helps. It helps. Obviously, you can film yourself, and obviously as martial artists, when we're doing forms and stuff, and I'm trying to compete and do whatever, I'm watching my own self. I'm looking, all right, well, it feels one way when you're doing it, but then when you actually look at it on the video, it's like, oh yeah, I gotta change that. So film is helpful. So that's kind of, again, before I had any type of formal training, that's how I got my my training pretty much, is I would just study boxers. I would study I did the same thing with basketball. I played basketball. When I first learned the game, I just popped in the tape of the greatest players ever. It was like, all right, I'm still in that move. I'm still in that move. And that's how I did it. And I would go back and work with it. So the same thing applied to martial arts. I just use the same thing as mostly a lot of people do. Is just I had no way of actually getting that training that I wanted at the time. So, do what you got to do.
So you get in, you walk in, and that's your first martial arts experience. At that point, you've been training on your own, challenging people when you were younger, sparring with some people, putting the boxing gloves on, do some boxing. But you finally walk into like an actual formal studio when you meet now Professor Rania Sagiri. What was your first impression as you walked in? You start going to class, start running through the ropes. What were you thinking at the time? Like as it was happening, what were you thinking about?
Honestly, just excitement. Like for me, it was like, you kind of normally you see this stuff in hindsight. Oh, it was a journey. But for me, at the beginning, I was like, I'm starting my journey. Like I wanted to do just the most basic stuff. Like you want me to sit in the horse stance for 20 minutes? I'm happy to do that. Because I felt like that's what training was. If you're going to start at the base, ground work from the ground up, that's so, the basic stuff excited me. I was just really excited about that. And, not even belts. I didn't even care about the belt. I just wanted to just start training and see what I can do against other people. Like, how do I stack up? Where do I stand against everybody else, the other students? Like, I'm a white belt. This guy's a purple belt. Let me see if I can beat him. That was kind of the mentality I had. It was just so general happiness to finally be, where I want to be as far as, that realm of martial arts, at least the beginning of it.
So you start training, you're finally doing what you've always wanted to do. You found the environment, you found the right people. You said there was like people that you wanted to challenge and fight. And then and just for those people that don't do Kajukenbo, when you say fight, what rule set were you using in the sparring back then?
You do your point sparring and stuff. That's just part of the game, which I honestly, I did okay in point sparring, but that was never my favorite thing to do. I was always more of a continuous sparring thing. Like I wanted to, and this is, right around the time UFC is starting to blow up. We're talking early, 2000, like I said, like the 90s, it was just becoming a thing and a huge thing. So I wouldn't want to go that far into that sport, but when we fought, I wanted to just, let's mix it up. There's no breaks and, let's pause and call some points. I didn't want none of that. I just wanted to just bang it out. And, in my mind, I felt I could hit you more times than you hit me. So, I felt like that was a challenge, just to try to, that was the rule set. Like that was my favorite thing to just, sometimes we would get on the ground too and do all that stuff, but just letting the hands and feet go. That was pretty much what it was.
So since I was there, like continuous sparring for those of you that don't know, if you ever enter an open martial arts tournament, they have these things called open martial arts tournaments where different styles can fight each other. They compete against each other. Sometimes there's knockouts allowed, sometimes there's not. Tournaments vary in contact. But at a Kajukenbo school, or I can actually speak for this one because I was actually there. I'll always say that. Like sometimes, I have to ask more questions about this. I don't have to ask that many questions about this because I train with Mike and I train with Ronnie Sagiri, so I know exactly what the rule sets are. So continuous sparring is essentially American kickboxing. There are no leg kicks allowed, and it's from the body up. Now, see, back then, Sifu Ronnie's school, now Professor Ronnie's school, there's a lot of gray in this rule set. That's what was said on paper if you went to a tournament. But then Sifu Ronnie would always say, "You guys want to bang?" And at that point, you were allowed to do just about anything you wanted. Yeah, just about anything you want within limits. Don't break anything.
Yeah.
Don't kick anyone into the mirrors.
Yeah, don't break anything.
Yeah, try to stay in the center of the mat so nothing is broken. That didn't go well one time with that one guy, and there was a wall, and there was a hairdressing room, and apparently there was a story about a hairdresser and had to replace some drywall. That rule didn't get followed to a T all the time. But essentially, it would be considered very close to MMA rules. We like to wear the open glove Kempo gloves, right? We had the open glove Kempo. Sometimes we read the sparring, the point sparring ones, but for the most part, for that kind of banging, it was the open glove.
So pretty both. I have my even open hand, Jeet style.
Yeah, back then, because
I had the sparring. It depends on what we're trying to do. I got my gloves ready to go for whatever we're gonna get into.
And a little later in time, they finally had the MMA gloves. But we're talking about pre-MMA. Like, you can get MMA gloves. Good luck, and good luck finding them for under like $100 because they were expensive. It was not. They were not. Now you can get them for like $30 on Amazon.
Yeah,
delivered to your Amazon was delivering books back then. You couldn't get. You're gonna get MMA gloves on Amazon. You're gonna get a book. You're gonna get a book about MMA gloves on Amazon back then. It wasn't the Amazon that you know now. So the rules are pretty open, and you usually give us about 20 seconds or more on the ground, depending on how much you're going to let it drag out. And so yeah, for those of you trying to figure out what the rule sets are, those are the rule sets. Now, there was a purple belt. Who was that?
No, honestly, I wouldn't give a exact or a specific name to any person. It was more of just if you're a higher rank than me, I want to test you. Like, I want to see where I stand with you, right? And so if I get in there and we mix it up, and I feel like I've accomplished what I need to accomplish, show my dominance or whatever however you want to put it. It's like, all right, so what's the next? Who's next? Like, looking at, and then I get to brown belt and I'm looking at black belts. Like, I want to fight this guy. I want to fight that guy. I just want to challenge, just to see where I stand, win, lose, or draw. I didn't get everybody. I got two. It's just the nature of the game, but you want to test yourself and see where you stand. I think that's just the competitive part of martial arts, because it's an individual thing to a degree. You're challenging yourself on a daily basis, and you don't have a team you're working with. It's you. It's just you individually challenging yourself, and then again, you're seeking others to kind of see where you stand in the world. See if you're a big fish, a little fish, or whatever. However far you want to take it. I never wanted to do anything professional. That was never my goal. I just like mixing it up, scrapping, and that daily challenge, because when you fight a person, you really you learn something about that person that nobody else knows about them unless they fought them. You know what I mean? Like, there's a cadence, there's a rhythm, there's a connection between you and that other person you're fighting. So after when it's all said and done, you shake hands, you hug, and there's respect there. Especially if that person gave you something, and then that's where the respect comes from. You have a connection that nobody else has with that person. That's how I've always felt. So I fought guys and fought guys better than me. Losing fights, and it's like you still get that connection. I gain that respect for that guy. Okay, this is what he's good. He's better than me. I'll admit it. This guy's better than me. I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna go back to the lab and try to work on some other stuff, because what I did wasn't working today. So, but next time I see that guy, I'm gonna try to get him. And it's just an ongoing challenge to yourself.
So I should have asked you this earlier. You kind of answered it, but I'm going to do a direct question. Why did you start training in martial arts? Like, we say how. I did the how. I should have done the why first. Why did you start training in martial arts? Well, you kind of mentioned it earlier, but what was it exactly that drove? Because people have a different answer to this question. So people were like, I just want to scrap. Nowadays, a lot of people, there was a professional track. Back then, there wasn't not a professional track. Okay, there was the people that were doing MMA back then, and even Joe Rogan talks about in his podcast, when he talks about John Hackleman and Chuck Liddell. Those are the pioneers of MMA. And a lot of people, John Hackleman was one of the few that actually knew what they were doing, but there was a lot of people that just did not know what they were doing. And they were like paving the way for what's happening now. Where now you have people walking in like, I want to be a professional MMA. If you would have walked into a gym back then, I want to be a professional MMA fighter, they just laugh in your face. Like, what are you talking about, a professional MMA? There's a profession? You can make money on this? You guys
again, at those times, it was brutal, man. I mean, it was like, UFC, the early stage of MMA was just brutal. That's what I was saying. I like to fight stuff. I ain't trying to go out there with those guys and get smashed up, because, I got to live life.
Yeah.
But
there
was no money in it.
No, there was casino fights. A lot of casino fights. Like in my area, and we were in the same area. If you wanted to do MMA, it wasn't going to be through the UFC. You were going to take up some shoddy promoter from the casino, who may or may not actually be a promoter, and they'd offer you stupid money, like $200.
Yeah,
$200, win or lose. And if you win, maybe we'll throw in $100, and maybe you get $300 that night, maybe.
Right.
And then no insurance.
And it was, yeah. And again, it wasn't the same regulation wise, as it is now. So
yeah,
you're taking your life in your own hands for what? For peanuts,
Yeah.
So, but shout to those guys who persevere because they can see something bigger, coming. Shout out to those guys. Much respect. But yeah, to answer your question, so it wasn't really. I didn't want to go out and like hurt people or. That was never my intention, my goal. I felt there was a connection there. Like I kind of believe in fate. And I believe that you do certain things for a reason. There's always a reason behind whether you know what the reason is or not. You do certain things, and like for me, martial arts, it just felt like I needed to be involved in it. Like I needed to, in some capacity. And again, it wasn't about fighting. It wasn't. I wanted to do everything. Initially I wanted forms of self-defense, what weapons, whatever. I just want to just get that knowledge, gain that knowledge, and just start moving, start working. So that was my motivation. I felt like I needed to be in that. And then as you older, you start to see stuff on the streets, people getting beat down, and you don't want to be part of that. So eventually it's going to come your way. So you want to be ready for it. So that was just extra motivation to be like, all right, well, I got to be able to. That's coming. I'm talking about as a teenager, young kid coming up. I'm not as a man. As a kid, you see these things and you're like, I gotta know something. You know what I'm saying? I gotta have some way of defending myself, or down the line my family or whatever the case is. So that was extra motivation for me, not only just start it, but to stay in it, continue to work it, to this day.
So now you're doing martial arts, you're doing what you wanted. There was a self-defense theme behind it. And I always say this to people because now the podcast is now in 2020, right around the corner of 2024.
Yeah.
And I always tell people like there's a generational gap between why people did martial arts in my generation and why people do martial arts in this generation. And if you look at statistics, I can show you statistics to prove it. Like crime has gone down. But we come from the generation where crime didn't look like it was going down at all. It was bad. It was really bad. So a lot of people from my generation, I'm not going to be all back in my day. I'm trying to pull that on you. But I am going to say that a lot of people from my generation did come in for a self-defense aspect. Like I mentioned earlier, there wasn't a career path for martial arts. I started hearing those words halfway through my martial arts journey, and I was like, career?
Yeah.
Like, oh, you gotta go to this next tournament for have you ever thought about your fight career? I'm like, my what? Excuse me? Because that wasn't even on my mind.
Yeah.
But you're going through when and how was your first we're getting to competition now. And when and why and how did you end up competing? Because obviously, like you said, you came in for a self-defense aspect, but you wanted the whole package. You're like, hey, I accept it. I like training. I'm down. You want to put me in a horse stance? I'll do it. You want to do forms? Fine, I'll do it. That's part of the training, and you were looking forward to it. But now there's a competitive aspect coming your way. When and how did you end up doing your first tournament? What did you compete in, and what happened?
So I was always competitive. I played basketball, and still to this day, I still play. And just having an avenue for competition with the martial arts, I was like, well, yeah. Plus, Secret Ronnie forced me to when I was a white belt, so I had no choice. But he got me out there, and like, all right, well, I didn't do well. My first tournament, I was nervous. I literally woke. You get to the tournament about 8 o'clock or whatever. You walk and greet people, you warm up and all that stuff. I woke up at like 4 a.m, and I was already stretching and warming up. And I think I did weights. I was tired by the time I actually fought, but that's neither here nor there. But I get out there, I'm just nervous. Like, I get first scrap, I kind of lost my mind. I didn't really focus on what I was needed to do. I was just kind of reacting to stuff and didn't go in like my normal game plan or whatever. But once I hit the guy for the first time and scored a point, I'm like, oh, okay. And I relaxed a little bit, and I went a little further. I was outmatched. Again, this is my first tournament. I'm going against guys who've been doing it for a little while. So I lose, and I was upset, pissed off. You're young. I was not 19. I was like 25, 26, something at the time. I started late in martial arts, and I took that to heart. Like it really bothered me that I lost. But then, you know, as you start to continue to compete, you relax more, you start winning and things like that. And you realize it's not really about that little plastic trophy they're going to give you. You know, it's, you know, it's just, that's just a, you know, kind of something they use to remember what happened that day. At least for me, that's how I picture trophies. But it was just a lot of nerves, you know, a lot of just, I felt like it's weird because, you know, you train, you as a young practitioner, you're helping people behind you, and then you got people rooting for you now, and it's like, nah, I felt pressure. Like that first tournament, I felt like I had to win. Like everything is riding on this. It wasn't like I'm a white belt, so I'm fighting and yellow.
You're fighting for the belt.
Like this is it. Yeah, this is big time. I'm here. I made it. You know. But nah, like it was just a lot of nerves, you know, and you know when you get that under your belt, and then you start getting more relaxed, and you know, like I said, the wins start, you know, the W start coming, you start, all right, you start to get into your little groove or whatever. But yeah, that first one was it was a San Diego Grand Nationals. Big, like, that was my first tournament, so jumping into a big one on your first one, that's why I think a lot of people there was crowded, you know, just a crowd and stuff.
Yeah,
that was the first time really, being around that
at least
stuff.
about this over the national tournaments here in San Diego. They attract over 300 people.
Yeah, it was bigger than that back then. Like it was downtown, and it was, you know, it was packed. You know, it was like the whole place was full. I mean, you know, that died down after a while. It wasn't such a big thing. You know, once the UFC really hit the mainstream and things kind of switched off and changed as far as traditional martial arts and sports. So the tournaments that I would, you know, go to start to dwindle a little bit. The crowd would, you know, but those first few ones that I went to were pretty big, a pretty big deal. You had celebrities there, you know, it was a big deal. So you know, that's where that kind of all contributed to that feeling of, oh man, this is the big time.
This is big time.
Even though it really wasn't. I mean, we're talking to the local tournament, but for me it was. And so like I said, I didn't do as well as I wanted to do. I competed in point sparring, I did forms, you know, I did my I might have done it well, I don't know, just something to that effect. And I did the continuous sparring. And that's you know, that's when I was like, oh, okay, yes, this is what I need to be doing. And that was something else because again, you know, you get out there, there's no weight classes, right? And I'm at this time, I'm probably half the person I am now. You know, I'm sitting at about 175 pounds, much more than that these days. And they paired me up with this dude who's about 220.
There were no weight classes back then.
There was no weight class.
Oh yeah, that's something we should. Oh, yeah. Let me put something out there.
It's not at that tournament. There was not a weight class.
Coming.
Yeah.
Even later in the tournaments, like now, they're a little more strict about it. I think again, because of the UFC, they started looking at it and being like, "Oh, maybe we should have weight classes."
Yeah.
But back then,
pure safety.
Yeah, more or less, they'd ask you your weight so that the first few fights they might try to get someone close to your weight, but there was no guarantees. It looked very similar to the jiu-jitsu tournaments now. The open jiu-jitsu, they have weight classes, and then they have the open. And in the open, it's open. Yeah. So there's no weight classes in that either.
Yeah. So that was yeah. The open. So yeah, they paired me up with it, and I'm real thin. But you know, I'm fast, and then I was a little bit a little fearful, a little scared. You know, you get the adrenaline pumping and everything. It's like, you know, we get up there, bow in, and you know, we get into our stance, and the first thing that popped in my head is I'm gonna hit this guy before he hits me. Because I know when he hits me, it's gonna hurt. And you know, as soon as the, you know, the ref said fight, he threw a front kick. I knocked it down, and I clocked him. Like it was almost like it was like an overhand right, pretty much. Which in those tournaments you're not really supposed to do, you know. But I literally just out of just fear and just adrenaline rush, I clocked him and I almost knocked him out. And he stumbled back and fell. I got a warning. Which, you know, I felt bad because, you know, that's not the goal of those types of competitions. But you know, we got up, we shook hands, we hugged, you know, are you good? You're good. All right, man. Then we literally scrapped for 2 minutes straight without taking a break, just punching the hell out of each other. And yeah, literally, I think I sprained my wrist. I might have had some bruises going up in the rib cage area and everything. You know, they stopped the fight. You know, I won. You know, I won the match and everything because like, they literally hit him more than he hit me. But I just remember, after he dropped my hand, everybody, hey, great, good job. And then I stumbled off the ring, and everything started hurting all at once. Like my wrist, like it's bumped, my wrist is bumping, my ribs were all busted up. I'm like, oh man. I just like sat down on a chair. And then I had to do forms after that. I was like, all right, nah, you know. But it was a great experience. So that told me, right, that first tournament set the tone for me as far as me, where I stand with other competitors, like, and I learned at that time, at a young age that, you can have that fear, you can use that fear, right? You turn it around and use it on, to fight your way through whatever adversity you're dealing with. So at that time, the fear, brought that hell of a punch out of me. And I was like, okay, all right, he's bigger than me, but I got a punch too, so then, that kind of set the tone for me competing in other tournaments from then on out.
So I know you don't like to toot your own horn. I'm just gonna say it. He's won a few trophies, to say the least, in his days. He's got a few trophies. He's won a few since then. You've won a few national tournaments. Now, as you move through the ranks, you competed. And we'll get to the end of that later. Let me go to the next question. When did you end up testing for your black belt? And what did that look like, and how did everything go?
I don't remember what year it was. It was 5 years after I started. I know that much. 5 or 6 years after I started. And like nowadays it's different, obviously, at least in our particular lineage. But it was a 2-day test. The first test, I just had to do some auxiliary forms, things I've been working on, just to add to the whole mix. So I did a couple forms there the day before. And then the day of the test, basically you have to do pretty much every self-defense technique you were taught. And I think we're doing like 40 different techniques or something like that at the time. You had to, whatever weapons you're working on, you had to do your forms for that. You had to do your 2-on-1 fights and things like that. And, then you get called out by whatever black belts there. So, by the end of the day, you're exhausted, completely exhausted. I just remember I got my black belt. We went home and, I basically passed out, just passed out. So, it was a lot to do.
We got to wrap things up. So, because we got other stuff to do, like I said earlier. But what I will say is, before you go, anybody who wants to get into martial arts, what's some quick advice for them?
Go into it with an open mind. Open mind. Because you go into every system, and you see something you don't like, and you just, this is garbage, and you just kind of toss it out. But I accept, or look at it, any martial arts, and just go into it with an open mind, absorb that information. If you have a curriculum, learn that curriculum, and then once you get your black belt, just expand.
Just chilling. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, everyone. Catch you next time.